Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. First things first, a big congratulations to last week's giveaway winner, Layla Lockhart. And as always, I do a giveaway every single week, so if you're interested, I'll tell you later on in the video how to enter. But today we have some malicious compliance stories, and our first story of the day is by Tuna Tofu, Commission Impossible. I work with computers at my day job, so I type wicked fast. When I was a cashier, I was also lightning quick, which was a bonus during the holiday season with the long lines. I could go through my long line of customers and call over customers from other registers too. So the salesmen, and yes, they were men working on commission, were too good to ring up their own sales or to have their customers wait in line, so they would cut ahead of all the other customers who had been waiting. I would apologize profusely to those who waited, then have to stop and ring up the commission sales. But the inconvenience wasn't enough. I got attitude when asking for their employee number to properly put the sale into the register. You should know that, you've done it before. Well, yes, about 3 months ago in the middle of a busy Saturday, and it didn't occur to me to memorize other people's employee numbers. So I just rang it up using my number. And the next 20 or so transactions they butted in line to ring up. So a week goes by and I get my check and it is huge. As it happens, that previous weekend and during the holiday season, the store had a promotion where the employees got an extra $1 in our check for every $100 we rang up. I seriously did about 35 grand in sales that week. I did get a stern talking to about ringing up commission items without being a commission employee, and that they didn't have a way to pay me for those commissions because I was hourly. I then explained how I had to ring up the sales for that department and how they had butted in my line to make me ring them up. The commission guys were raising holy heck, and I get it, they needed their pay and selling suits isn't easy. I wasn't trying to take their money, but the store policy was that they were supposed to ring up their own sales. The managers asked me if I could tell which sales went to which employees, and I honestly couldn't. It had been so busy and there were so many transactions, I couldn't remember from a week before. So the store did a little rough justice. They added up all the commission sales done on my register with no number assigned and split it evenly among the sales folks in that department. Maybe not fair, but better than no paycheck at all for those guys or giving it to me. But the store did let me keep the bonus for ringing in the sales, so the salesmen totally screwed themselves on multiple fronts. And they never came to my register to ring up anything again. That was enough for me. If this was you, would you feel a little guilty for keeping all those bonuses that those guys technically earned you from butting into your line and forcing you to put their orders in? Or would you be shamelessly happy with it and consider it a commission of their commissions? Let me know how you think you should feel about it in the comments below. Our next story is by CaptainLosingIt. Alright, I'll get those return cases down, no problem. This sub reminded me of a personal experience at a large desktop/laptop supplier, amongst other IT services. This was about 15 years ago, and I imagine most of this work has now been outsourced to low-wage countries. The name of the company are 3 capital letters. They don't do consumer hardware anymore. My job was to screen hardware issues with desktop and laptop computers, mostly laptops. A person would call customer service, their problems would be written up. I'd review the ticket, call the person if there's any uncertainties, and then write up a plan for an on-site engineer to follow. If I would determine the problem to be the memory, but it ended up on being the motherboard, this would be considered a return case, and we were strictly monitored on those. We were expected to be doing about 20 to 25 cases per day and only have 1 to 2 return cases. Here's the thing though, I easily did 30 to 40 cases per day. I did this for about 8 months and then I started to get negative feedback from my manager. He said my return cases were too high. Most of the time these were within acceptable range, but sometimes there would be 3 or 4 per day. The fact that I did near double the cases I was expected to handle was never commented on. After receiving this feedback twice, I decided to change my daily routine. I logged onto my phone, I went for a coffee and a chat. After about an hour, I do maybe 15 cases until lunch. I take my lunch break, have another coffee and chat, browse some game strategy guides, do some online courses or reading, do the remaining 5 to 10 cases, and go home. Now I did the mandatory 20 to 25 cases per day and just left it at that. Fewer cases equals fewer mistakes. Problem solved. I got complimented by my manager that I managed to get my return cases down to only 1 per day on average. Of course, this job got boring fast and had no future prospects, so I went away from there not too long after. But I'll always remember this experience and vowed to never work at such companies again. Their concerns are valid, but they're very misguided. They're too focused on how high the number is and not the reasoning for why that number might be higher than usual. It's frustrating to say the least that they're following the guidelines on how many return cases you need to have in a specific day, but not looking at how many cases you have overall per day. I guess to them, if you only do 20 to 25 cases per day, you're fulfilling what they want of you anyways. You don't have to do 30 to 40 per day regardless. It's not a bad job if people like some downtime, you can read some malicious compliance stories on Reddit. Our next story is by Anarchy612. If that's the way you're going to be, just leave. Backstory. I used to work at a small manufacturing plant in the shipping department, up until a few months ago. Now, the thing about this plant is that due to some well-intentioned mishandling by the previous owner, the plant is currently owned by the bank. Because of that, the plant manager doesn't really know too much about the day-to-day running of the plant. He mostly just makes sure the plant isn't losing the bank any money until the buyer can be found. Thankfully, there was a good floor manager and a good shipping manager to cover the shortcomings. Then the plant closes down for a bit. When we reopen, we learn that the floor manager is retiring immediately and won't be returning. But that means the plant manager is now the floor manager as well. Additionally, all other managers and office staff are now work from home. So on top of floor manager, the plant manager now needs to handle any issues that arise that are too pressing to contact someone off-site. The structure of the shipping department is this. There's the shipping manager, who is now work from home. There is the shipping supervisor, who comes in early and leaves around 3-ish. Then there is me, who came in around 10 and left when the last truck to be loaded came. Meaning that after 3-ish, I am the de facto head of shipping. On to the malicious compliance. At some point, I could see the writing on the wall. Layoffs were coming. Very possibly the whole plant closing. Needing something more stable, I found another job. Now, I hadn't given my 2 weeks yet because it wasn't set in stone yet. May as well have been, but until I have a piece of paper or email that says I have the job, I don't have the job. I had one coworker on the production floor who liked to push my buttons. I'm typically not the type of person whose buttons you want to push. I'm not particularly imposing, but I've been told by guys twice my size that when I get mad, I'm scary. Anyways, on this particular day, he decides that the best way to push said buttons would be to walk into the forklift lane as I am passing to grab product to ship. Multiple times, I'm forced to slam on the brakes, causing me to spill a couple loads. Eventually, I explode. I don't remember what was said, but I went off on this dude. Eventually, the plant manager comes over to quell the situation. As I explain the situation to him, I say something to the effect of, "I could have killed him. I still might." To which the plant manager responded with, "If you're going to be like that, just go." I looked at the clock and noticed it was close to 4, meaning if I left, no one was there to load the trucks. And while the physical act of loading a truck is simple enough, the system to record everything was not. And it wasn't something you could do later either. It needed to be recorded at the time of shipment. Naturally, I looked back to plant manager and just blankly replied with an okay. I grabbed my things and left. The second I got to my car, I called my supervisor. He and I are really cool with each other. You could even say we're friends. He also hates the coworker in question and is not too fond of the plant manager. I told him what was going on, and he told me that he was off the clock and doesn't deal with work crap from home. Basically telling me he was with me without saying it. The shipping manager was the next call. Now she is one of the nicest women I have ever met, and she will defend her crew to the death. And apparently, unbeknownst to me, she had started vacation the day prior and would also not be dealing with work crap. Normally, she would absolutely deal with this even on vacation. Now, both of them knew I was leaving and that I didn't give a darn about the repercussions. The plant manager didn't. I don't exactly know what happened from there that day, but I do know that of the 12 trucks scheduled to ship, only 3 did, and that's because they showed up before I left. It's also worth noting that in our line of product, if something that was our fault causes the customer's production to shut down for any amount of time, the company gets fined. Contractually, not legally. In the end, that coworker never did mess with me again, and the plant manager ended up being a lot nicer to me too. So because the coworker is being an absolute idiot and willingly walking right in front of a loaded forklift, and I'm getting angry over them doing that, that's why I have to leave because I'm being like that? It seems like the plant manager was picking obvious favorites here and choosing the guy that willingly walked in front of a loaded forklift over the person doing the actual critical work. I'd be with OP too, I wouldn't be doing work crap from home either. Wink wink. This next story is by dreadsquidred. Don't wear earbuds to listen to music at work? No problem. A couple of years ago, my office hired a new manager who, apart from being terribly suited to the role and therefore disrespected by the staff group as a whole, decided that a good way to establish theirself was to do away with our department's well-loved one earbud policy. We aren't a call center, but clients do contact us. Well, since they had no industry knowledge or training, none of us had any idea why they were hired at all, they decided that it would be a great idea to disallow everyone from listening to music or whatever through their one earbud. New manager framed this as giving us the advantage of listening to each other's clients' calls so we can learn. That is a really cute freaking way to say, I am too inept to teach or guide any of you so you can do it yourselves. They literally wanted us to learn from floor talk while performing the jobs we do every day. That's like expecting an experienced pastry chef to read up on the properties of flour. We already know. But they weren't allowed to tell us we can't listen to things at all. We could still listen to what we wanted on our computer speakers. Cue malicious compliance. I find it's easier to concentrate when there is a quiet, constant voice in the background. So I really enjoy SCP YouTube videos, particularly by the Exploring series. But I also like to listen to ASMR, which a good number of people patently hate. There was no rule that we had to listen to music, so I continued to listen to these as I normally would, minus the earbud. It took about 3 months in all. I would listen to these speaking videos on a volume that was just enough for me to hear it clearly, but also just enough that it was annoying for everyone else. I knew people were complaining to management, and I also knew A, they were too PA to say anything to me directly, B, they were aware that I have damaged hearing, so they likely didn't want to question it to my face, and C, also that management couldn't actually do anything to stop me because I was technically following the old rule, that our listening material be at a reasonable volume, and the new rule that I cannot wear earbuds to do so. Eventually, we had another team meeting where new manager announced that, due to popular demand, we would consider bringing back the earbud thing on a trial basis. Only one other person resumed using earbuds besides me. The popular demand was probably every complaint lodged against my curated SCP content. Now we're working from home, so I can listen to whatever the freak I want. I think as long as productivity doesn't dip, they should be able to listen to whatever they want. Obviously, OP explained the entire reasoning was because the actual manager was too inept to train anybody. But yikes, you gotta get somebody in that can actually do their job. Also, not gonna lie, some ASMR sounds are kind of interesting to listen to. Are you the kind of person that absolutely hates ASMR, loves ASMR, or once in a while you'll find yourself listening but don't actually really listen that often? I'm kind of curious what the common perception here is. I'm definitely that kind of person that listens once in a blue moon, but it's not something I would usually go to. Let me know. And our final story of the day is by Ensign Bricky71. Follow brand identity rules when told not to by sales staff. I spent about 20 years in the sign and advertising industry, primarily in design and production, so I am very familiar with rules regarding brand identity and logos. I had been at the same company for about 15 years, worked my way up from being an outdoor installer to being the primary structural and visual designer for the company. We were a small company, 35 or so employees. The sales staff was never more than 2 or 3 dedicated salespeople, usually one for petroleum accounts and the other 1 or 2 handled commercial accounts and private customers and one-off sales. Around 2010 or so, they promoted one of our sales guys to a managerial position, so they had to hire a new salesperson. I will call him Dingus. He was an older guy, initially pleasant enough, but he quickly began to grate on the rest of the shop due to his unwillingness to learn the ins and outs of our products and not getting thorough surveys, which always caused problems when the job sold and went to production. This became enough of a problem that we started following up on his surveys on our own to make sure they were correct. One day, Dingus came to me with a proposal for some signage for an industrial campus for a fairly large agricultural corporation. Nothing gigantic, mostly a bunch of non-illuminated wayfinder signage with logos and colors to match the brand. But there were a lot of them, and they were easy to build, so it would be a pretty profitable job in the end. I put together a package and emailed everything over to Dingus. He sent back an email to me saying that I needed to change the colors on the logos and the iconography to 2 completely different schemes not included in the brand guidelines. He said that the person he was working with at the company had requested those colors. I replied that they needed to consult with their corporate marketing department to authorize the change per their brand identity. I made it a point to tell him that if we produced these signs with altered brand identity, we were opening our shop to the possibility of reworking every sign at minimum and possibly stepping on some toes legally. He told me to disregard their forms and do it anyway, and that I had better have a revised package ready for him on Monday to send to the customer. This guy wasn't my boss, and his rudeness pissed me off and initiated the malicious compliance. I put together the new package using the colors he requested. I made sure to call out the PMS colors on all layouts with notations in the descriptions so there would be no doubt that this was a deliberate change. I then emailed a very nicely worded email to the sales guy and CC'd a copy to the customer's marketing for approval, as is standard for our shop and their brand. I made sure to ask them to contact us with any corrections that needed to be made and provided the appropriate phone numbers for Dingus and myself on the email. Monday rolls around and I get called into the office. Dingus and the owner/CEO begin grilling me about going over Dingus's head to the customer and how my email has caused an issue between corporate and the local manager who had requested the changes. I told my boss that I had been specifically told to disregard the customer's brand identity and I had made the changes as requested. I then pointed out the instructions from corporate marketing that said all advertising must be sent to them for approval. As I was the primary designer, I was authorized to do this since any feedback from marketing would come to me for revisions anyway. I pointed out that I was never told not to send the specs for approval and that it was part of my job to make sure that my designs would meet the customer's specs. Since the on-site manager said it was okay and I had emails telling me this was the case, I had no reason to think that there would be an issue. I knew darn well this wasn't the case, but I played dumb. As it turned out, the on-site manager just didn't like the corporate color scheme and wanted to do his own thing, since he was the king of his little fiefdom. Dingus just wanted the sale and was willing to break copyright rules to get it. My email exposed they were trying to run around the corporate just to get the sale done. The owner/CEO called corporate and confirmed I had followed their rules to the letter and that changes to their brand identity were not allowed without explicit approval from them. I was told I had done nothing wrong, and Dingus got an extensive lecture and barely avoided being fired, but was gone a few months later. We still got the job once I corrected all the colors back. Having dipped my toes personally in the world of design and graphic design, you have to follow a company's brand identity to the letter. There was one job where I was tasked with designing the cover for a company's annual report, and I was literally given a handbook for their brand identity. You literally have to read through this entire booklet to understand what you can and can't do. Very, very specific colors, shapes, what you can and can't do with the logo, how far the logo has to be from the edges. There are specifications on everything, and you cannot break this, or else you're causing yourself some major trouble. So OP knew very well that them trying to get around this is a major design sin and a major sin against the company. It can put an entire design company's reputation on the line depending on what client it is. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here on the Storytime channel.